So the last few weeks we kind of had this almost impromptu little weird series of going through the Psalms. So kind of as we noted before, the Psalms are kind of unique in the Bible. A lot of times in the Bible we have basically either there's like a story, say some of the Old Testament, where they're telling you a story, this is what happened, or you have the Gospels or the book of Acts where it's saying, hey, you know, Jesus did this, or the apostles did this. And then you have different stuff like you have the prophets who are saying, God is telling me to tell you this information. But the Psalms is unique because it is us, it's humankind, people who are expressing their thoughts, their desires, their emotions, everything to God. So that's what one of the things that makes Psalms very unique. So it's not as much as God telling us something as much as we're telling God something. And so we get to see, get to peek into this interaction between God and humans. And so we've gone through a number of some of these expressions. We've gone through some of the ones that are angry, some that have despair, some that have sadness. So we're going to look through more of a happier tone today. We're going to look through Psalm chapter 139. And let's go ahead and flip over here. If I can manipulate my computer. All right. So who wants to read the first section, just verses 1 through 6 here? Right. And you're more than welcome to volunteer, but I'm not gonna pick on you today since it's your first time here.
Sam does.
Sam wants to read the first
Yeah.
one. But also Jackson, you know what happens when you try to volunteer somebody else what to do? It comes back to you. All right? Are you able to?
Wait, read to what?
Just verses 1 through 6, just the full screen here, and then we'll go ahead. We're going in sections here.
You have searched me, Lord, and you know me. You know when I sit and when I rise. You can see my thoughts from afar. You discern my going out. What's that say?
Going out.
And my lying down. You are familiar with all my ways. Before a word is on my tongue, you, Lord, know it completely.
You him me.
But in behind and before, and you lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me to
lofty.
For me to attain.
All right, thank you, sir. All right, so again, we're also looking at trying to notice. We're gonna look when we go through the thing. We're looking for patterns or anything that we can kind of see that kind of stands out. But this first section here, like, let's try to look at the emotion here. What is so? It is David, the guy who wrote most of the Psalms. He wrote this. So can anyone try to tell you when you're looking at this, like, what kind of emotions do you think he's feeling or he's expressing? Awareness. Okay.
Aware.
Do you want to be any more specific? Aware of what?
Aware.
He's just aware of aware.
He's aware of God's presence.
Aware of God's presence. All right. Anything else? Anything else that he's trying to express here? So just like again, like we said, kind of in the beginning, a few weeks ago, that Psalms a lot of times this is a songbook, right? So granted, it's translated from ancient Hebrew to English, so there's some like figures of speech that it doesn't quite translate as well as we would like to. But again, this is a really good translation here. But the point is, so this is a songbook. Have you guys ever listened to songs to like express emotions?
Yes.
Right. So like when you're feeling.
Mostly sadness.
Yeah. So when you're feeling sad, you got your sad songs that you listen to, right? If you're trying to get all hyped up and excited, you guys have like a playlist that like gets you all hyped up and excited. It's Beethoven or something. I'm just kidding. No, but yeah, for all the different emotions you have, you guys probably can think of at least a few songs that help you help express and give some words or some feelings to those emotions that you're feeling, right? Yeah, this is the same thing here. So take a look at this. Like, what do you think? What kind of emotion else do you guys think that he's trying to convey?
He's like, God, you crazy, man.
God, okay, you're gonna have to elaborate on that a bit.
Okay, like, especially with that last part, like, your knowledge is too wonderful to me, too lofty for me to attain. This is like, the things that you know are way too big for my brain to comprehend.
Okay, yeah.
This is crazy, man.
Okay, gotcha. All right, so
I'm aware.
A little.
I'm aware.
You're aware. Yeah, so there is this awareness. There's this recognition, right? Maybe this comparing of yourself to God, not in a way of saying that, hey, I'm like God, I'm as great as God. It's you're having an honest look and comparing yourself to God, realizing, hey, God measures up way more than I can, right? So there's a bit of humility here too, right? But it's not like a sad humility, right? There's,
Yeah.
you think maybe there's hopeful, there's maybe expectation, there's this recognizing that something is way beyond you in such a good way, right? So we've talked about this before. In Proverbs, you guys ever heard the phrase, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom? Right? And the term fear, I'll go very quickly, this isn't part of the lesson really, but I'll go very quickly through this. The term fear has 3 different meanings. Usually, fear is this idea of being afraid, terrified, right? This time of year, people watch horror movies and try to scare themselves for whatever reason. It's not my cup of tea, but whatever, right? Right. But there's like this horror, fear, right? Or this phobia type of thing where you're afraid of something, like you're afraid that you're going to get hurt or something.
Needles.
And then a lot of times we hear there's this idea of fear as reverence, right? You're revering something. You're recognizing something is better than yourself. And so so like a person might fear a king and they would bow before a king. Does that make sense? I'm kind of using old ideas and language. But then there's this idea of fear, which is in English it translates kind of weird, but the idea is the real word is awesome. Right? Now, granted, we use awesome way too loosely, but I mean, like, you are full of awe. So, has anyone ever been to the Grand Canyon?
No.
I've not, but
I have seen pictures.
Yeah.
but have you ever heard?
Sounds
Have you ever?
cool.
Right, but have you ever like talked to someone who's been to the Grand Canyon
No.
and they told you how just wow
That's a
it was?
grand kid.
Have you guys ever? I recommend you guys do this at any point where you can.
Sorry.
If you try to go find an interview or anything of an astronaut telling you what it's like for the very first time to go into space and to look back at the planet Earth.
I bet it's crazy.
The breathless wonder that they describe, the just sheer awe and wonder that they have, that just completely goes over their entire being, right? Now, many astronauts who go up there time and time again will say that like it doesn't get old, like
I
it's
like-
so
I bet
super
it
cool.
don't.
I
Right.
like to
Now-
watch the ones where they come back from the Earth and they forget that gravity exists.
Yeah.
So they,
Gravity
drop
was
That is
like-
funny. So, but
And
think,
they, like,
but
look
think about that for a second. Like that is what they meant. That's what it means by the fear of the Lord. Right now, this type of fear has all of it. Right. So imagine if you're at the Grand Canyon, right? You have this fear, this wonder. Oh my goodness, this thing is so much bigger than me. Now, if you step over, there is the danger of falling. You also have this sense of respect of there is something way beyond and outside of myself that has this here. But this all-encompassing sense of awe and wonder, that's what it means by the fear of the Lord. And so it seems, do you think, now with that understanding of fear of God, or that awe, the awesome, the really true sense of the word awesome, do you think that's what it's talking about here? Does that, it's like, so you have searched me, Lord, and you know me. You know when I sit and when I rise. You perceive my thoughts from afar. You discern my going out and my lying down. You are familiar with all my ways. Before a word is on my tongue, you, Lord, know it completely. You hem me in behind him before, so you protect me is what he's saying here. Behind him before you lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me and too lofty for me to attain. Does it sound like he's maybe describing that sense of awe and wonder and like a proper sense of fear?
amazing.
Yeah. Amazement. There you go. I think amazement is a really good
It's like
way to
Yeah.
describe that. All right. Who wants to read the next section, verses 7 through 12? I'll scroll for you where we need to. 7 through 12. Who's going to read it? Thank you, Sierra. Let's do this as loud as you can.
Where can I go from your spirit, or can I flee from your presence? If I go up to the heavens, you are there. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there. If I rise on the wings of the dawn, I settle on the far side of the sea. Even there your hand will guide me, your right hand will hold me as fast as I say. Truly the darkness will hide me, and the light will become night around me. Even the darkness will not be dark to me. The night will shine like the day, for the darkness is as light to you.
Thank you very much. So obviously there's a continuation here. It's the same thought that he's working on. He's expanding it out a little bit. But any thoughts on this? Obviously we got, kind of the emotion. Do you think is there anything else that he's contemplating from the emotional standpoint? Or do you think he's just continuing on what he's talking about?
He's continuing on,
Okay.
but he's saying like, God's everywhere.
Okay, so he's elaborating a bit. He's challenging, elaborating what he's got to give you. So there's kind of like there's the simple, basic understanding of God's everywhere, and he's giving like detailed instructions. Okay, yeah. So there's this progression from a general statement to something very specific. Anything else? Anyone notice? Is there any pattern, any words that stick out to you here? Anything at all? It's okay. I'm pushing you guys a little bit just so we can. We're trying to think through this. Is there anything? Is there any phrase that sticks out here? Any words that stand out to you? Maybe it's something that just it's an interesting. I never thought of it that way, or maybe you don't understand. Or yes, Bailey.
Darkness.
Darkness. What is that? What draws your attention there? Or try to elaborate a little bit if you can. Let's see here. Is it 11 and 12 here? If I say, surely the darkness will hide me, and light become like night around me. Even darkness will not be dark to you. The night will shine like the day, for darkness is as light. That's what you're referencing, right?
Oh.
Yeah. So think about that for a second. So basically, David is saying, the psalmist here is saying that basically God is everywhere. God knows me so well. He knows my words before I even speak them. He knows what I'm thinking. Right? And this isn't necessarily like Santa Claus, like he's going to know if you've been naughty or nice. You know, it's not like necessarily like that. He's saying that God knows me so well. In the New Testament, we hear where Jesus says that God knows God has a number for every hair on your head. Like God knows you so well that the countless amount of hairs you have on your head, He even knows all of that. It's a expression to say that how much God knows you. God knows you deeply, and like you specifically, not just you as one of how many billion people you have on the planet. Now it's like He knows you very specifically, very very detailed, even more than you know yourself.
One thing that stuck out to me personally, is if I settle on the far side or rise on the wings of the dawn and settle on the far side of the sea. I think that might be referring to east and west, because I know that the sun rises in the east.
Right. Yeah. So the wings of the dawn. I had to do some looking up some commentary and stuff on this. The general understanding of this wings of the dawn, rising on wings of the dawn, which to us, really cool. well, yeah, it's a really poetic, really cool way to say it. What are your guesses as to what that means? I'll tell you kind of what my research has shown.
My guess is waking up in the east, because I know that the sun. It rises in the east.
Right, the rotation of the earth and all that. Yeah.
That's me personally.
Right. Think about it. Have you guys ever watched? I imagine most of you guys have not seen too many sunrises. Have you seen sunsets?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen sunsets or sunrises too? I get what they're talking about. Very pretty, very much so. I never got around to doing this. It's so upsetting that I never did. But when I lived in Florida, it's only about 2 to 3 hours from one coast to the other. I wanted to go spend the night on the East Coast. I live on the West Coast of Florida. I want to go spend the night on the East Coast, see sunrise, and then travel to the other side of Florida and watch sunset and be super cool. But have you guys ever noticed the rays of the sun, right? So you see this beam of light. Obviously it's the sun. You're getting light everywhere, but you see the specific beam of light, right? That's what it's talking about. From the very first crack of dawn, the sunlight, right? You have the rays of the sun. That's what he's saying, rise on the wings of the dawn. So basically at the very first crack of light in the day is what he's talking about. And back to what Bailey was saying here is that if I say, surely the darkness will hide me and the light become like night around me. So basically this idea of God knows me so deeply, so well, and He knows even my thoughts the words before I say them. If I try to hide myself in the darkness, in the darkest parts of the earth, right? Wherever is the most dark thing. And granted, they didn't have flashlights, they had torches and stuff, but they did not have the light technology that we have, right? So again, he's using poetry to describe the world, or at least in a sense, he's using poetry to describe this incredible experience with God in the world that existed at the time. So if we think of the absolute darkest dark, you guys ever been in a cave?
Yes.
And they turn the lights off and you literally cannot see your hand in front of your face?
Yes.
That's what he's talking about. So if you go into if we go to Mammoth Cave and you go into really, really far deep into the cave and you're just boom, lights off, can't see anything, that's what he's talking about. That complete sense of darkness, no light whatsoever. If I hide in there, surely I cannot be seen. But he's saying that surely the darkness will hide me and the light become like night around me, right? Even the darkness will not be dark to you. God will light up the darkness and God will still be able to see him. Your hand up or you chilling?
Humans are in the dark, they're kind of glow in the dark.
What was that again?
Humans are kind of glow in the dark because I don't know, just look it up on Google.
Okay, gotcha. There's a bit of a glow in the dark element to it. Yeah, and it is incredible. If you sit and adjust for a while, if there is any light at all, there are some places where there is zero light. But if there is any light at all, your eyes can typically adjust. But when you're really, really dark there. So we'll go 13 through... I I clicked on something earlier and it started.
Oh my God.
Anyways, don't worry about the other stuff. We're only worry about the English. We'll go from 13 through 18. Who's next? 13 to 18. Yes.
Okay.
And I'll scroll for you as we get there. Okay.
I will.
It is. Don't worry about the other language thing.
For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place, when I was woven together in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book. One cannot.
Oh,
one
last
before.
Go ahead.
Okay. In your book, before one of them came to be. How precious to me are your thoughts, God. How vast is the sum of them. Were I to count them, they would outnumber the grains of sand. When I awake, I'm still with you.
Yeah, you forget that extra bit. I was messing around with one of the tool things. You can look at it in some of the Hebrew and whatnot. And
You gotta read it in Hebrew.
Yeah. You try to read the Hebrew. All right. So, anyways. So, looking at this next section here, obviously, it would seem. Do you think it's still continuing, or is he expressing different thoughts? Is he going like more deeper into details?
It's like
He's like, you
Further down the
knew
rabbit
me
hole?
Before I was even alive.
Yeah.
deeper into the
Did he have that accent when he said this?
Yeah.
Yeah. Didn't realize David was British, but you know.
Yes.
So Psalm 139. This is a much more lighthearted psalm. You know, we've gone through some of the other emotions, anger, despair, and sadness and stuff. So we're looking at the happier end of it. And so, just for your sake, since you came in early, the beginning of it is, you have searched me, Lord, and you know me. You know when I sit and when I rise. You perceive my thoughts from afar. You discern my going out and my lying down. You are familiar with all of my ways. Before a word is on my tongue, you, Lord, know it completely. You hem me in behind and before. You lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me, too lofty for me to attain. Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I go up to the heavens, you are there. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there. If I rise on wings of the dawn and I settle on the far side of the sea, even there your hand will guide me. Your right hand will hold me fast. If I say, surely the darkness will hide me and the light become like night around me, even the darkness will not be dark to you. The night will shine like the day, for darkness is as light to you. I'll go ahead and read this last little bit too, just so we're all caught up and on the same page. For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place, when I was woven together in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book, before one of them came to be. How precious to me are your thoughts, God. How vast is the sum of them. Were I to count them, they would outnumber the grains of the sand. And when I awake, I am still with you. So that last section, verses 13 through 18, I'll scroll up a little bit where you see the bulk of that. So any other thoughts? Emotions or thoughts being expressed? Did you guys see? Or anything that, any phrase or words that stand out to you? Secret place?
Yeah.
What about the secret place stands out to you? Is it just that phrase or
That
what?
phrase, it
Yeah.
stands out to me. I don't know why.
Okay, so again, I've been doing some research on this chapter in particular. So again, remember, he's trying to describe something that is basically between him and God, the interaction between God and man. He's trying to describe this, and he is obviously using poetry to try to be able to describe things, and he is also using the all the information that was available to him at the day. Now remember, David was a shepherd, so David, had some sense of biology, because he was a shepherd. He tended for the sheep. He cared for the sheep. So this idea here, you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. So I praise you for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place. What do you think the secret place is that he's referencing?
The womb, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Referencing the womb.
Yeah,
Now,
woven. I said woven.
yeah, woven together.
Yeah.
So basically there is this coming together of your parts in your body. Now granted, they didn't have ultrasounds. I was talking to Tiffany about this. I was like, yeah, they didn't have ultrasounds. They just had regular sounds. There you go. Yeah, somebody got that joke. Thank you. They didn't have ultrasounds. They didn't have any way to see through through the body into seeing how the baby was growing, whether that be in animals or humans. They didn't have any idea really what was going on or how it was formed. And now we do have incredible technology, and you can watch the progression. It is mind blowing. The progressions that babies have in the womb. But it was talking about, like, so I was made in the secret place. Like, there's this thing that nobody has access to, right? Nobody can see what's going on here, but we know, but there's something happening. And so he's noting that even before I take my first breath, even before I am seen and my body is seen, I am hidden, right? So a baby inside the mother's womb, especially without technology to see through, the baby's hidden, right? You can't see the baby, right? Now, it's kind of creepy and weird, like, you know, well, we'll go into some of that
Why
stuff.
did they even know they were pregnant?
Well, there's won't go into all this stuff. There are multiple ways to understand that.
Well,
You know,
yeah, but like,
within the first couple of days, you may not know, but
I mean,
it-
Then how do you know when you're due date?
there's awareness,
Because like you don't
Yeah.
know
and
when
then
you're pregnant. It just happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
ratio,
Yeah, just-
statistics.
you can-
It's in the water.
yeah.
I mean, they probably calculate
Yeah.
like an
So,
exercise.
anyways, yes, there are
How
plenty
far down
of
the rabbit hole
yeah.
you going, man?
Yeah, so there are plenty of ways to know. Obviously, again, with technology today, there are certain things you could do to look for certain chemicals that they didn't have access to. Well, yeah. What do you think when you do the test, pregnancy tests? It's checking for chemicals, hormones. Yeah. Well, everything. Yeah, I say chemicals. That's kind of like a catch-all term.
Because it like
But-
sends,
Yeah.
it like sends the baby or
So, anyways, you will learn more. You will learn more as you get older.
I don't even know what to say to things. I don't know.
Yeah. Ask you.
Okay, so, but yeah, so obviously, if you want some more detailed information, feel free to ask your parents.
I'm gonna look it up.
But no, seriously, I mean, feel free to talk to your parents about this. I mean, your
I got
mothers
this
would have
when I
some
was in
idea
first
as to how you would know. A lot better than just a test because, well, you're all here, right?
Bro, that still shocked me.
Yeah.
Chemicals?
Yeah, I say, listen, okay, there's certain, hormones is a more, Mallory, hormone is a more accurate term. Even within the science and biological world, there are catch-all terms, right? So, what was it force? You know, like in science, if you hear the term force, that's kind of like a catch-all general term. Like we don't,
Physics.
you know, in physics, right? And so chemicals is yet another thing that, like, you know, periodic table, all that stuff. It's like without going into too much stuff, you know, and chemicals may not have been the best term, but the point is, you're able to do more accurate, specific tests today that you could not do 2,500 years ago. So, but yes, there are plenty of ways and indicators to have, let's just say, have a very strong indication that a woman was pregnant. So, but anyways, but this idea is that like this secret place, and then when he's saying, it's just interesting, this third line he adds in there, is when I was woven together in the depths of the earth. So imagine, you know, we talked about like darkness, right? You know, like in a cave, it's so dark you can't see your hand from your face. Is a mysterious place, even to the point. There's different commentators would say like actual literal locations, like at the heart of a cave that you know, or tunnel system that no one's ever been to. It's a mysterious thing. So we know it's there, and we don't know much about it. Or the same thing as far as like life after death. Even some other commentators would say that it's like there's not a lot of details exactly when the world's going on, but we recognize that there's something here, and so it's a mystery to us. No one has been there and come back. So therefore, he's relating that same thing of a woman being pregnant or a baby being formed in the mother's womb as that same type of mystery. It's a mystery to us. It's beyond our understanding, but it's there to exist, and God has a hand in this process, right? So it's a very interesting concept. I'm glad you guys brought that up. It's a very interesting concept there. So yeah, the other lines with that, your eyes saw my unformed body. And then he kind of concludes the section with, how precious to me are all of your thoughts. How vast is the sum of them? Were I to count them, they would outnumber the grains of the sand. Again, he's using a poetic metaphor type of language to say that God's thoughts towards me are more than the grains of sand on the seashore, right? Like, if you guys have ever been to the beach, you know there's no way you're ever going to count that, right? It's just, it cannot be done. You could,
Well,
and people
could if you really hated yourself.
Well, I'm just saying, like, you could spend every day of your life counting, and I
you
don't
would
think
still
you
not
count
count 'em all.
just on one beach, you know. But he's saying, like, think about that, right? Think of how vast every single grain of sand on the sea would be, right? The beach would be. He's saying that God thinks about us more than that. If you numbered God's thoughts, they would outnumber the grains of sand. It's absolutely crazy, isn't it? Yeah, absolutely. So. Yeah. So what do you think when he's expressing this? Let's focus on that for about 2 seconds here. What do you think he's trying to tell you about God and humans? So if God's thought toward us, if you can number them, are more than the number of grains of sand on the seashore.
He's got
Yeah.
big brain about it.
He loves us and he cares for us. He's a big brain, yeah. But yeah, he knows everything about us. He cares for us. He focuses on us, right? There's other scripture in the Bible that talks about how among all creation that there is, that we're God's favorite, right? That God has picked us out as his favorite among all creation. As cool as, the antelope is or whatever,
As cool
you
as
know,
antelopes are.
right, and armadillos or whatever, God thinks that we're better than that. Better than even the coolest, like the redwood trees out there on the West Coast, right? God likes us even more than that. God values us as even higher than those, right? And again, now when this comes to how do we live in the world, right? From Christianity, from the Christian standpoint, looking at the Bible, we can say, okay, so God values us this highly, right? So this helps us set our values, right? So I guess what I mean by that is, not sometimes we try to think of like in these extreme scenarios, like, okay, are we going to cut down this tree or cut down a human, right?
down the human.
Because we think of these extreme scenarios. Philosophers love doing this. Gives everyone headaches.
Trolley
But
problem.
the trolley, yeah. But the problem, right? But but if you were to actually, let's modify the trolley problem. Let's say there are 5, the last 5 of a certain particular kind of tree, or 1 human. What do you run over?
The tree.
You run over the trees. You run over the trees. Leave the human alive.
No.
Why?
Yes,
No.
There's
because
not another human.
because let's scroll back up here.
So many other people on the planet.
No, let's go. No, listen.
Hey!
This is what you call a values misalignment here. This is okay. So
Jordan's like,
because
kill
this,
them all,
okay,
save the tree.
okay. For you create. Let me read this to you. Now think about that problem as I read this text here. Okay.
Alright.
As I read this text, think about the weird modified version of a trolley problem where you're killing non-humans versus a human. Right. Again. You're not in that scenario. You're not trying. You don't have.
Killing the trees.
No,
might
hold on.
actually
I didn't say the last
affect
5 trees of all everything. Which, by the way, there's interesting stuff noting that we get most of our oxygen actually from the plants in the ocean. But I said of a particular. Let's just say a particular type of tree that's going extinct is what I was talking about.
Exactly.
Right. So now, which sounds more important here? For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. I praise you, because I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place. When I was woven together in the depths of the earth, your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. How precious to me are your thoughts, God. How vast is the sum of them. Were I to count them, they would outnumber the grains of the sand. When I awake, I am still with you.
Yeah, see?
Right?
He'll
That
be
doesn't
awake
talk
and
about
he'll still be
trees.
with God. It's
You,
fine.
you save the human. Anyways,
No,
so
but here's the thing,
for the
here's
sake
the
of time,
thing.
we should probably need to
Here's
move on.
the
But go, make your
If-
make.
If you're
exactly,
I didn't say
exactly.
a particular
So
kind
here's
of
the
tree,
thing.
but even
Here's the
then,
thing. If you're
save
gonna
the
have
human.
if you're gonna have that type of mentality and you'd rather get rid of the trees than the human,
You're gonna
if
kill a lot
you
more
if you
people getting rid of
eventually
those trees, I can
exactly
tell
if
you
you
that.
get rid of the trees, not only are you affecting the human, but you're affecting the entire ecosystem.
Oh my gosh, we just stopped.
Okay, so anyways, I'll make my.
I like
You
the
made your final
okay.
point. I'll make my final point and we'll move on. First of all, and this happens a lot in dialogue, I mentioned of a particular type of tree. So like a particular type of tree is going extinct. Number 2, if there were only 5 trees left in the world, well,
We would be dead.
we would be having problems anyways.
Be the Lord.
Number 3, I did also try to mention, and it's very interesting that the trees do not provide most of the oxygen
Coral.
that we have. You have a lot of stuff in the ocean. Is right. And number 4, this is one of those crazy hypothetical philosophical questions.
I say
That is a philosophical questions that the point of them is not to find out whether you would. The point of philosophical questions is not to find out whether or not you would kill trees or kill a human. The point of it is where do you place value? That's the point of almost every.
human is more
There's just a tip for you guys. The point of almost every philosophical option that comes like that, like the trolley problem or whatever, it is to see where your values are, right? So the values are we're going to preserve human life as much as we can, right? And again, now you can get into different arguments as to what method is better or whatnot, but the point is, God values us so much, and they also have other thoughts. We talk about this, the Imago Dei, which is basically saying everybody has essentially the imprint, the thumbprint of God on their lives. Every single one of us are made into God's image and likeness. Now, what we do with that is a different story. Sometimes we do horrible things to God's image that we bear. We bear God's image, and sometimes we do horrible things with that. Now, that's a different thing, but when we say that every human has equal value, that all people are created equal under God, that comes from that idea that we are all created with God's image imprinted into us. Again, that doesn't mean everyone is good. It doesn't mean that everyone does things that are good. We have free will, and we can do good things or bad things with that image. But in God's name and in God's image, we live. We live and we move and we have our being. So that's what he is poetically referencing and bringing all of that into consideration. Yes.
I mean, just looking over this, it makes me think that what the author is trying to tell us is that he's trying to say you need to be humble because we're not God. We like to think we know everything. We like to, especially nowadays, we have scientists who can tell us all this information, but we don't know the number of hairs on our head. We don't know he's using all this stuff because we try and put God in a box and we try and say, oh, we got God figured out. But God you can't figure him out.
That's his whole thing.
He is God. He is way bigger than us. And it's almost comical for us to try and say, hey, this is the formula for God here. We've got it all mapped out.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like it's impossible. We are the created and he is the creator. And that is what the whole underlying thing is here. He's saying, be humble because the creator knows everything and you are the created.
Yeah. That's a good point. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this up. We'll do a couple of points, and if we have time, I'll play somebody actually turned this into a song. We'll try to play that if we can. Yeah. Which
said, oh boy.
Yeah. So again, I'll finish this up again. Just pay attention if anything stands out to you. If anything in this reminds you of a previous point, if you find like repeated phrases or ideas, make note of that, and we'll briefly mention that. So if only you, God, would slay the wicked away from me. He like pivots really hard here. Away from me, you who are bloodthirsty. They speak of you, speaking of God, with evil intent. Your adversaries misuse your name. Do I not hate those who hate you, Lord, and abhor those who are in rebellion against you? I have nothing but hatred for them. I count them my enemies. And then this last section says, search me, God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there's any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. So there's a couple of things I'll probably give some information to, but very briefly, what stands out to you guys in there?
Anxious thoughts.
Anxious thoughts. Let's see. Search me and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. That's an interesting way to point. So let's think of it this way. When everything's calm or whatever, you have your, the way that you're thinking, right? But when anxiety kicks in, does your entire thought process change?
No.
No?
Yes.
When anxiety, so when anxiety kicks in, so when anxiety kicks in, or stress, or whatever term you're using, does your entire thought process change?
Absolutely.
Right? You can have people, for example, who are very optimistic. People who are very optimistic, when anxiety kicks in, they're very pessimistic, right? The things that you think about change, right? People who might even be normally like open and giving, they might be a lot more held back and reserved, kind of a fight or flight scenario, right? And when anxiety and stress kick in, that's a very natural thing. And so he says, search me, God, and know my heart. Test me, right? It's like, okay, hey, test me. Am I good? Am I not? Because sometimes we think of this in our good moments. Like, hey, how many of you guys want your teacher, you may not care for tests or quizzes, but if a test or quiz is going to happen, don't you want it to happen on the stuff that on the day where you know your stuff?
Yeah.
Or right after you just read the material, you don't have to think about it, you just, right? But so we all want it with those. If a test is going to happen, we want it to happen when it's like fresh, right? When we're in good. But test me and know me, and know my anxious thoughts. So what do you think? What is he asking here? So it's like God's asking God to know my anxious thoughts.
Know the way that my brain.
Know the way my brain works. Even when I'm stressed and I'm at my worst, right? How many guys would say if you're in a state of anxiety or heightened sense of stress, you're probably at your worst possible version of yourself, right? Yeah, at least in the moment you are, right? So so it's like, God, even in this moment, test me and know me, right? And he says, goes on to say, see if there's any offensive way in me, anything that's wrong in me, even if it's just when I'm anxious and stressed out and I'm acting out because I'm anxious and stressed, or my body's under a lot of stress. I can say, obviously there is all of that. An extra thing for me as a diabetic, when my sugar is really high, I'm not on top of my game. I'm not in a good mental state there. It pairs very well with anxiety and stress as far as how I'm not in a good state of mind there. But if there's any offensive way in me, even when I'm understandably not at my best, see if there's any offensive way and lead me in the way everlasting. So I also noted before, at the very beginning, we said in Psalms, this is not always where God is telling us something. So God's not telling David to hate people, right? He's not saying that. David is offering this up, saying, hey, people who hate you, I'm on your side, God. So if people hate you, I'm going to hate them too, right? You guys have any friends where it's like you don't have a problem with a random person in your school, but your close friend has a problem with them? And so now, because your friends, like, you have a problem with that person, right? It's like, if it was no other deal, like you and them, like you might have lunch or whatever, it doesn't, no big deal. Like, you guys are fine together, right? You don't have a problem with them, maybe you don't like them, you don't dislike them, but you're fine with this person. But your friend has a problem with them, and now you got to take your friend's side, right? That's kind of what David, so everyone feels that, right? Yeah. David is feeling that too, and he's expressing that as far as with God. There are people who not just hate David, but people who hate God. People who are speaking very evil of God. Not just saying that, well, I don't know if I believe in God. Not saying that, but like people who are like actively like against and hating God, spitting curses against God, or saying things about God, declaring things about God to be true that are false. Right? They're lying about God. They was like, oh my goodness, I hate these people. I wish they would not do this. But at the end of that, you get David riled up about the thing that he cares about the most. You get to the very end, and what does he say? Search me and test me. Even in my anxiety, even when I'm getting really passionate and zealous, I'm hyping, like you're hyped up for your friend. You know, you're going to be against the person who's against your friend, whether or not your friend, whether or not it's just or right or whatever. Like, you're against that person who's against your friend. It's like, even in this moment, God, please test me. And if I'm wrong, please show me the way that I need to go. Now, very briefly, is that a good attitude to have? Not necessarily to hate those who hate you, but like that, you know, maybe I'm wrong. Yeah. And please show me the right way. Yeah. So we get to the very end of it. He's like, wherever I'm wrong, please show me the right way. And then the last thing, because I don't know exactly how they're doing it. They're closing. Okay, so I'll make this last point here. So you don't have to memorize this term. It's not a test. But there are, like I said, this is poetry. There's different literary devices. They're in the Psalms, particularly any of the poetry you see in the Bible. Not every single one of them have this, but there's a literary device called a chiasm. Basically, have you guys ever seen like those keystone things? Like you have like a stones that build up an arch, and you have that middle stone that holds everything together. That's what a chiasm is, but in literary devices, or in literature. So so we have a lot of these here in the Bible. So in Psalms, the chiasm, and I won't go into all this stuff. We don't have time to. But the structure. This is basically, if you want to understand the entirety of the entire bit of poetry that's being expressed, you need to understand what that keystone is, that chiasm. What is there in the middle that holds everything together? And from that, both forwards and backwards, the entirety of it, and usually it's right in the middle, but it's not just the verse in the middle. You have to break down the stuff a bit further. But it's these 2 or 3 verses here. For you created my inmost, one we spent the most time on. For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in a secret place, when I was woven together into the depths of the earth. That right there is it. This is the author is using a chiasm, and this is the keystone to understand the entire thing. So God knows me. God knows every thought that I have. God, I cannot escape from God. Every time if I try to go and hide, God will find me. If I go to the other end of the earth, God will find me. God knows me. God knows who I am. You saw my unformed body. You think of me. If I were to count your thoughts, they are more than the ocean, more than the grains of sand on the ocean. And then this, this idea of there's people who are against God, so I'm going to be against those people, right? This idea, the zealous, I'm going to put myself out there and try to be against that. There is all of that. It comes under this idea that I am the way that I am, or I am who I'm living the way that I am. My thoughts and everything are only because I recognize that you are the one who formed me together. Before I could do a single thing, before I could speak a word, before I could do anything, you are the one who put me together. It is by God's hand, by God's strength that I live. It is when people say that, first thing in the morning, you can be thankful that God gave you breath that morning. There's many people who die in their sleep, and it is granted it's a lot, that is less bad than going through a torturous death, obviously. But again, you wake up in the morning, no breath is guaranteed, right? No breath is guaranteed. So when you recognize that and recognize that it is a gift from God, your entire life can look different. And in the very beginning, I'll read the last phrase and the first phrase and the last phrase. So you have searched me, Lord, and you know me, all the way down to search me, God, and know my heart. Right? Those are that's almost a direct mirror to each other, right? And again, that without going into all this stuff, that is something very interesting. For the sake of time, I'll skip through a little bit, but I'll play that last song. I think we'll have enough time to get here. This is really it's a lamb. It's a Moravian seal. So there's two different things. As a Christian, I'll just describe this in maybe less than 2 minutes. This is a very old kind of Christian group that's like 400 years old. They're a group called the Moravians. It's really interesting. They had a couple of phrases that was really interesting. So this one was, "Our Lamb has conquered, let us follow him." So Jesus has conquered death. Jesus has had victory over the grave. Jesus died for our sins. So we're going to follow him. So basically in the same concept of David saying, "You knit me together, and my brothers, you formed my body. You know everything about me, so I'm going to live for you." In the same way, just a 2.0 that we do with Jesus, is the only reason I have freedom in life, the only reason that I can live the way that I could possibly live, the only way I have freedom from sin, and I am not held to the fully to the consequences, especially eternally. I'm not held to the consequences of all my bad mistakes, all my choices that I have made, that I have corrupted myself. I am not corrupted because you have cleansed me and fulfilled me. The same concept. I'm going to live for God. As our Lamb is conquered, let us follow him. And another one they have, I couldn't find the image for it quickly enough, but basically it says, "Win for the Lamb the reward of his suffering." So Jesus already suffered. He already died. He rose from the dead. He did all this. So it is our responsibility to live for God. Does that make sense? So for the sake of time, we're going to skip ahead to that song over here. So yeah, this is it's a group called the Sons of Korah. They're named after a.
Oh yeah, I was listening to some of their stuff on Spotify.
Yeah, dude, it's cool. Now they got some weird stuff. Some weird versions of songs. But this is one. It's been on for quite a while. I really love this particular song and this psalm here. But I would say if you guys like. I'm going to say music, but if you guys like to do music, to write music, anything of that nature, where's my... There we go. Then if you ever want to write songs or anything, there's a wide market for using the Psalms. Not just making your own text out of it, but like absolutely like using the lyrics that are already there. So anyways, with that, enjoy the song.